Imagine a young leader standing defiant in the face of global superpowers, daring to demand freedom for his people in a world chained by colonial rule. Patrice Lumumba wasn't just a leader, he was a threat to the CIA, to Western powers, and to the status quo of global dominance. To Congo, he symbolized hope and sovereignty. Yet, to his enemies, he was a man who had to be silenced, no matter the cost. But what made Lumumba so dangerous? Why did his vision for an independent Congo ignite fear in the world's most powerful governments? And how did his assassination send shockwaves across the globe, sparking protests and leaving a legacy that still shapes African politics today? Patrice Emery Lumumba was born on June 2, 1925, in Onalua, a small village in the Belgian Congo. He grew up in a modest farming family within the Tetala ethnic group. However, despite his humble beginnings, his curiosity and intelligence marked him for a future far beyond the fields. Lumumba excelled at missionary schools, mastering French and several African languages. This ability allowed him to bridge divides in a country fractured by ethnic tensions. But life was not without its challenges. As a young man, he moved to Leopoldville, now Kinshasa, and began working as a postal clerk and later as a traveling beer salesman. His sharp intellect and ability to communicate earned him respect, but his life took a sudden turn in 1956 when he was accused of embezzlement, leading to a year-long imprisonment. Instead of breaking him, this setback fueled his resolve to lead. Meanwhile, Congo was gripped by anti-colonial fervor. The scars of Belgian rule, forced labor, exploitation, and oppression were fresh. Lumumba saw unity as Congo's only path to freedom. Therefore, in 1958, he co-founded the Mouvement National Congolais, MNC, a party that sought to unify Congo's 200-plus ethnic groups under one vision of independence. Lumumba's charisma and conviction made him a rising star, but his growing prominence also drew the attention of colonial authorities. That same year, he attended the All-African Peoples Conference in Ghana, hosted by Kwame Nkrumah. Inspired by Pan-African ideals, Lumumba returned to Congo more determined than ever to dismantle colonial rule. Tensions, however, boiled over in 1959. Protests erupted, and Lumumba was arrested during this volatile period, accused of inciting violence. Nevertheless, his popularity soared, turning him into a symbol of the struggle for independence. The turning point came at the Round Table Conference in Brussels in early 1960. Lumumba's uncompromising demands for genuine independence forced the Belgian government to concede. Thus, June 30th, 1960 became Congo's Independence Day. At the celebrations, King Baudouin hailed colonialism as a civilizing mission, but Lumumba's fiery rebuttal shocked the world. In his Independence Day speech, he condemned Belgium's brutality and exploitation. His words electrified the Congolese masses, but alienated Western leaders, who now saw him as a radical willing to disrupt global order. Congo's independence, however, was far from smooth. The Belgian withdrawal left a fragile state on the brink of collapse. Within days, the army mutinied, demanding the removal of Belgian officers and better pay. Therefore, public order unraveled and violence spread. Amid the turmoil, the mineral-rich province of Katanga declared independence under Moise Tshombe. Backed by Belgian interests, Katanga's secession threatened Congo's unity. Lumumba viewed this as a direct attack on sovereignty. Consequently, Belgium sent troops to protect its assets, deepening the crisis. Lumumba turned to the United Nations for help, hoping they would restore order. But the UN's neutrality left Katanga untouched, forcing Lumumba to consider Soviet support, a move that alarmed the United States. The UN's response was disappointing. While they deployed peacekeeping forces, they avoided directly intervening in Katanga, citing neutrality. Lumumba was left cornered. Desperate to preserve Congo's territorial integrity, he considered approaching the Soviet Union for support. The Cold War now framed Lumumba's every action. Declassified documents reveal that the CIA considered Lumumba a clear and present danger. In Washington, CIA Director Allen Dulles labeled him a communist, despite little evidence to support the claim. This perception set in motion one of the most infamous covert operations of the Cold War. Initially, the CIA tried to undermine Lumumba politically by funding his rivals, including Joseph Mobutu, a young military officer with ambitions of power. Mobutu, who had once supported Lumumba, quickly switched sides when he saw an opportunity to rise. But the CIA's plans didn't stop at political manipulation. They explored more sinister methods, including assassinating Lumumba. One plot involved poisoning his toothpaste, a chilling example of how far the agency was willing to go. While this particular scheme failed, it highlighted the lengths to which Western powers would go to eliminate perceived threats. Lumumba's growing isolation was no accident. It was engineered by a combination of internal betrayal and external sabotage. By late 1960, tensions between Lumumba and Kasavubu had reached a breaking point. Their ideological differences, Lumumba's push for national unity versus Kasavubu's federalist vision, paralyzed the government. Seizing the opportunity, Mobutu staged a coup, detaining Lumumba and placing him under house arrest. Lumumba's pleas for solidarity went unanswered, as allies abandoned him under pressure or fear. In a final bid to rally support, Lumumba escaped custody and attempted to reach Stanleyville, a stronghold of his supporters. But the journey ended in betrayal. Captured and handed over to Katongan forces loyal to Tshombe, Lumumba faced a grim fate. On January 17, 1961, Patrice Lumumba was executed. His body was mutilated and dissolved in acid, a gruesome effort to erase his existence. Patrice Lumumba's death marked the end of his physical presence, but the beginning of his legacy. To many, he became a martyr for African unity and self-determination. His assassination sent shockwaves across the world. In cities from Accra to Paris, Cairo to New York, people took to the streets to protest the murder of a man they saw as a symbol of resistance against imperialism. His death highlighted the lengths to which global powers would go to maintain control over newly independent nations, and it laid bare the brutal realities of neo-colonialism. In Africa, Lumumba's story galvanized liberation movements fighting for independence from colonial rule. Leaders like Nelson Mandela and Thomas Sankara drew inspiration from his vision of a united and self-reliant continent. Around the globe, students, activists, and intellectuals invoked his name in their struggles against injustice and oppression. Even decades later, his words resonate. The day will come when history will speak. Africa will write its own history. His dream of a truly free and united Congo remains a powerful reminder of what's at stake in the fight for sovereignty and dignity. Lumumba's legacy is one of courage and conviction in the face of immense adversity. His life and tragic death continue to inspire those who envision a world where freedom is not just a promise, but a reality.